to establish at least a community of Islam in the West. Not that they practice Islam on an individual basis, each and every one of us would like to do but that they are obliged to create an environment. So what we are presenting here is a situation of internal hijrah. The principle of hijrah is kept alive, not that we've given up that principle, but that it be modified to be an internal hijrah. And I think that the concept of hijrah needs to be reflected upon by Muslims in the West seriously, because it represents a major factor in the biography of the Prophet Muhammad. When we read the biography of the Prophet Muhammad, known as Sirah, oftentimes we tend to read it as a collection of historical facts which one may memorize for discussion purposes or for teaching our children, etc. But we are not really aware of the importance of the principles that are involved in it, which should be applied in our daily life. And when we look at the situation of Muslims as it existed, for example, in Mecca, we find that under oppression, Muslims made hijrah. Those of them that could made hijrah to Abyssinia, what we now call Ethiopia. And those who were not able remained behind in Mecca with difficulty, struggling, educating themselves, trying to become as grounded as possible in the religion, until the command came for hijrah to Medina, because Prophet Muhammad was not satisfied with merely calling people to Islam in Mecca, but when he found that Meccan society as a whole was not very responsive, he sought other avenues. He went to other regions, Ta'if, etc., asking, promoting and presenting Islam to other people. Eventually, some people from Medina who had come on Hajj and accepted Islam took it back to Medina, started to spread there. Prophet Muhammad sent one of his companions, Mus'ab bin Umair, was sent there to teach the Medinans who accepted Islam. And following that, the Prophet Muhammad was given the command for hijrah himself. When he made the hijrah to Medina, we find a turning point in Islamic history. Muslims who in Mecca were prohibited from fighting. Many of the laws of Islam, in fact most of the laws which have to do with governing society, as well as even laws which related to individual habits and like alcohol or fasting and so on. So these laws were not revealed during this period. So now once the Islamic foundation was set in Medina and a state, the Islamic state evolved out of it, we find then that the laws concerning the governing of society were revealed, the laws prohibiting the drinking of alcohol, and the laws of punishment for those who make certain crimes, etc., are being revealed in this period. And also the command to fight against the pagans was given. And it is from this point, from Medina, that Islam now eventually came back and took Mecca and spread over the whole of the Arabian Peninsula. Now, when we look at this situation, as I said, it is an example for us in that the principle of Hijrah did not end with the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. It is true that it is authentically reported that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ has said, يوم الفتح فتح مكة لا هجرة ولكن جهاد ونية. That is, the day of the conquest of Mecca, or the day of the conquest is that of the conquest of Mecca. And there remains no hijrah. However, there remains jihad and the intention to make jihad. This statement, however, has to be taken in light of other statements of the Prophet ﷺ, where he said, for example, لا تنقطع الهجرة حتى تنقطع التوبة، ولا تنقطع التوبة حتى تطلع الشمس من مغربها. That hijrah does not cease until repentance, or the chance to accept repentance, ceases. And the opportunity for the acceptance of repentance does not cease until the sun rises from its place of setting. It's one of the signs of the last days, the rising of the sun in the west. So, that original hadith which I mentioned, saying that there was no hijrah, what it is in reference to is no hijrah which was obligatory on Muslims at the time that the Prophet ﷺ made the hijrah. When he made the hijrah, it was then compulsory for Muslims to make that hijrah along with him. Whoever did not do so put himself in a state of sin. And the Prophet ﷺ had stated that if they were attacked, or if they found any kind of difficulties, Muslims would not be obliged to protect them. So, the hijrah is a standing hijrah until the last day of Muslims as a whole. And this has been further emphasized by Allah in the Qur'an in Surah An-Nisa, verse 97, in which Allah says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ تَوَفَّاهُمُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ ظَالِمِي أَنفُسِهِمْ قَالُوا فِيمَ كُنْتُمْ قَالُوا كُنَّا مُسْتَضْعَفِينَ فِي الْأَرْضِ قَالُوا أَلَمْ تَكُنْ أَرْضُ اللَّهِ وَاسِعَةً فَتُهَاجِرُوا فِيهَا فَأُولَئِكَ مَأْوَاهُمْ جَهَنَّمُ وَسَاءَتْ مَصِيرًا. When the angels take the souls of those who die in sin against themselves, they say, in what plight were you? They reply, we were weak and oppressed in the earth. They say, was Allah's earth not spacious enough for you to emigrate, to make hijrah? Those will find their abode in hell. What an evil refuge. When the angels of death come to take the souls of the believers, those who die in a state of self-oppression, that is, committing sins against themselves, and they do so by disobeying Allah, not fulfilling the commandments of Allah. When a person disobeys the commandments of Allah, this is looked at ultimately as a sin against himself. When a person sins, although he may harm others, etc., the greater harm is against ourselves. So those who die in a state of sin, who try to claim that they were in this state because they were weak and oppressed, they will be told that Allah's earth was spacious and they could have made hijrah. They did not have to remain in that circumstance. And Allah goes on to say that those who die in that state ultimately will find their abode in hell. What an evil refuge. This is very serious. A very serious statement in the Qur'an concerning hijrah. and the obligation of hijrah on Muslims. Of course, Allah goes on to clarify the situation for those who remain in the state, saying in verse 98 and 99, except those who are really oppressed, those who are truly oppressed, men, women, and children who had no means in their power to emigrate, nor could they find a way of escape. For them, there is hope that Allah will forgive, for Allah blots out the sins and is often forgiving. For those who had no means, no opportunity, their intention was to get out if it was possible, but there was no legitimate means for them to do so. There is hope for them with Allah, because Allah is all forgiving. And Allah goes on to say that he who forsakes his home, that is, he makes hijrah in the cause of Allah, finds in the earth many refuges and abundance. Should he die during hijrah for Allah and His Messenger, his reward becomes due and sure with Allah, and Allah is all forgiving, most merciful. So, those of us who find ourselves in this situation, recognizing the pressures which are on us from the non-Islamic society, whereby we are obliged to make certain compromises in our religion, where Allah has commanded us to do certain things, we're obliged not to do those things because the society does not allow these things to be done. And for sure, there are many such things. There are many compromises that we make on a daily basis. Those of us who feel wrong about it, then we have to look for some alternative. Those who don't feel wrong about it, then there is something fundamentally wrong about their faith, because Allah has put this in a very serious manner. That it's a question of going to hell if one does not remove oneself from a state of sin against ourselves. So we should, for us to be motivated to make that change, we should feel fundamentally wrong. But there's something wrong here. Repentance, tawbah, turning back to Allah has to start from a point of sorrow, a point of regret, one feeling bad about one's situation. See, as a Muslim, as a serious, believing Muslim, we cannot possibly be happy to live in the circumstances that we live in. As I said, we have two options. One, making hijrah outside of the circumstance, whether it's outside the country or to another area of the country, whatever. Or staying in our given circumstance and struggling to make a change. This is the other option that is important. Staying with the intention of struggling to make a change. And even when we stay and struggle to make the change, we will be fulfilling an aspect of it. Because the struggle which is involved to make the change is one which goes back fundamentally to the individual, where he, due to his commitment to Allah, strives his utmost to avoid what Allah has prohibited and to do what He has commanded. And as the Prophet Muhammad said, in the authentic narration, Abu Dawood, Al-Muslim man salima al-Muslimuna min lisanihi wa yadihi. Muslim is one from whom Muslims are safe from his tongue and his hands. That is, a true Muslim does not backbite, slander other Muslims, nor does he hurt them with his hands by stealing from them, taking their properties, etc. And the Prophet ﷺ went on to say, one muhajir, one who makes hijrah, من هجر ما نهى الله عنه. The muhajir, the one who makes hijrah, in the fullest sense, is the one who emigrates and leaves and abandons what Allah has prohibited. So there is, in remaining in our circumstance to struggle, an aspect of the hijrah which ultimately all of us have to come to. Because even for the hijrah to another land or to another area, for it to succeed, we have to make that internal hijrah away from what Allah has prohibited. Now, looking at our situation here, wherein we decide to stay and struggle, for us to do so effectively, we have to gather ourselves in various areas of this country. If an individual lives by himself or by herself, surrounded by non-Muslims, whenever any problem arises, there is no one that we can call on to help. The community is not there to support us. See, what we have here, we have a masjid and people scattered all over. This is not really a community. We come together physically for talks, for Jummah, for Salah, but then we scatter back again. We're individuals. The real community of feeling of being together, where we leave and we go back into that community, is not there. It is missing. And as such, what we find is that with each person busy with his own individual life, the kind of commitment necessary to make this masjid or any of the masjids in England a truly vibrant and living core of the Muslim community is not successful. These efforts are not successful. Because what you find is only a few people are willing to make sacrifice, and the vast majority use the masjid out of convenience. Where the masjid should be the center of the community, the hub of the community, whereby we talk about salah. When we talk about salah, we talk about the fact how salah, shows, demonstrates the brotherhood of Muslims. Whereby when we are making salah, and we don't see our brother present, he's missing one salah or two salahs, then we go to his home and we check on him. What has happened, brother? Maybe he's sick, maybe he's having some problems or whatever. That kind of a feeling cannot develop because people come to the masjid whenever they feel that. They're scattered all over, they go to one masjid, another masjid, whatever. See, the masjid is not the core and the center of the community where people leave the masjid, go back into the community which surrounds the masjid. So the people who are in the masjid are not necessarily people who are near to the masjid. They could be from, miles away. So you cannot necessarily expect this person to be in the masjid on a regular basis. So that aspect of that brotherhood, that concern which should come out of the prayer and jama'ah is lost. You really can't develop it. And this is the core of the brotherhood. What is commanded of us, of Islam, after our declaration of faith, is salah. That is the explanation. And if we are not able to implement salah in the full sense, then what can we say of the other pillars of Islam? For sure, the community is hurting because of its inability to implement salah on the level that it should. And as I said, this is really a function of the inability of the community or the communities in various parts of the country to gather, to concentrate themselves in any given area. What we do find is some concentrations, people from Pakistan or from Bangladesh in certain areas, or Arabs in another area. But these are ethnical concentrations. These have really nothing to do with Islam. People just gather because they're from the same background. Arabs, you may find some Christian Arabs amongst them. Indians, you may find some Hindus amongst them, or Sikhs, or whatever, So it's not really a question of people coming together because of Islam. Because when we talk about people creating a community by making hijrah into a given area, we're talking about a community which reflects the universality of Islam. Not a community of Afro-Caribbeans, where just Afro-Caribbeans will concentrate in an area which will be creating our community stuff. Or just East Indians. No. This will not be an Islamic community. As long as it is based on racial or national lines, this cannot be an Islamic community. Because Islam crosses all barriers. We are brothers because of our faith, not because of any destiny which determines our background. Because we should not feel an affinity to somebody else simply because he was born in the same country as we. Because that is something from Allah's destiny. We had no choice about it. We didn't choose to be born in Jamaica or Guyana or India or Algeria. This is not our choice. This is Allah's destiny. I mean, what should link us to other people is faith. Because it is the foundation of Islam. And so, it is essential for Muslims in this area to choose a particular region of the city or of the country wherein they would attempt to congregate, to buy into that area, to rent in that area, and to begin to live in that area. And out of that would grow the true institution, the real institution that the Islamic community needs to help them to fulfill the requirements of Islam on a personal, family, and communal level. Because what we're faced with here for the development of the Muslim community is a need for education. What we find is that there are not sufficient schools to educate our children. Most of the children are going to government schools. And we strive on the weekend or each day we try to give them a little something. However, this cannot compete with what they're bombarded with, 6 hours a day or 8 hours a day in their school circumstance. And when they come home, they come back into their given neighborhood. The people who are around them in their neighborhood, their neighbors, are most likely again non-Muslims, so these are whom they will play with. So what we give them for a few hours on the weekend, or half an hour each day, it cannot hope to compete with what they are bombarded with on a daily basis in the school, in the neighborhood, and through the media when they come home, whether it's television or whatever. Newspapers, magazines, comics, whatever. So the end result is that a large proportion of the next generation will leave Islam because we are incapable of handing down our attachment to Islam, our commitment to Islam to them. We do not have a means to do so effectively. And the means is through educational institutions. What we also find is that the few education institutions that are available, the fees that are involved are maybe too high for many people. The location may be too far away, practically speaking, to take children. So we're not even able to, many of us, or most of us, are not even able to make use of the available. Whereas the circumstance where you have a community in a given area where people are committed and have moved into a particular area, then the development of an institution within that area becomes 100 times easier than it is presently. It's 100 times easier because the people of that area will be willing to make the kind of sacrifices necessary to establish such an institution, which becomes a service to the community, because ultimately Islamic schools which serve the community cannot do so without the support of the community. The fees that they gain are never enough to cover the cost. This is something that I have observed personally in the numbers of schools that have been set up in the United States, in Canada, that though the administration may try to set a particular figure to bring in sufficient money to pay the cost for maintenance of the school and teachers' salaries, etc., what you find is that ultimately there are people in the community who need to put their children in these schools, and they have no means to pay. And for you to tell them, no, you cannot put your child in the school because you don't have the money, I mean, it is so cruel. It is so heartless that these community schools, for the most part, are obliged to bring these people in. A sister accepts Islam, she has children. She's just barely struggling to survive. She wants to put her children in Muslim school. You got to tell her, no, you can't put her in those children because you don't have the money? No. It would be unfair. So what you find is that the Muslim schools that are actually serving the community, I don't mean elite schools, you have some elite schools that come up where they have fees that are really high, and just for children of ambassadors or these type of, I'm talking about the general Islamic schools which serve the needs or attempt to serve the needs of the community. What you find is that they do not have sufficient economic means to run the school, because they have to pay the parents, the teachers a certain level of salary to be able to keep them in the school, etc. Whereas if the school evolved within that community, then you would find people in that community who have the skills and the means willing to teach at a lower salary, because that is a part of their community. It is a sacrifice they're willing to make because of the need of the community. And the community itself would help to look out for their own personal needs. When a person, for example, just in a general sense, if a person is called to make a sacrifice, he reflects back immediately to his family. I have a wife and children. If I do this and I get hurt, my wife and children are left behind. There's nobody to help them. They're just by themselves. Whereas, if somebody within a community where you have that real brotherhood which is evolved from them living in the same area, praying together regularly, struggling together, such a community, when you call on an individual to make a sacrifice, he will feel within himself that if I go, if I die or I'm hurt or whatever, the community will look after my family. So that will motivate him to make the kind of sacrifices which you cannot motivate anyone to do today. Furthermore, one of the things that we find in the society is that for young people, there is a need for entertainment, for them to entertain themselves socially. And what is most attractive in the society are the discotheques, etc. On one hand, we tell the young people this is haram, you shouldn't be in there because of what is happening in there, etc., etc. But then we're not giving them alternatives. There should be in the community a center where young people can come and socialize, etc., according to Islamic bounds. I'm not talking about a free-for-all, but along Islamic bounds where the young men get together, young women get together, etc., separately, etc. But there are social activities for them where they can fulfill, their natural desire to socialize, with their own peer group in a healthy Islamic environment. You see, again, with that real community established, then you can begin to develop such alternative institutions. As the situation exists today, this is virtually impossible. We end up having to rent certain halls or whatever, and money goes out of the community when we have to rent these areas, as well as these areas are, for the most part, of limited use, because we will not spend the kind of money necessary to develop them in such a way that they will be attractive to the youth. We also have the issues of the media. Within such a community, a physical community of Muslims, then you can start to look towards developing alternative media. You have cable television set up, whereby you can set up your own programming. Of course, this is quite advanced, but you have brothers amongst us who have the skills in media, etc., who could develop a program. But of course, there is no community, there's no demand for it right now. There is a demand theoretically, but there is no economic demand, no kind of support which would put those brothers in position to utilize their skills, for the community. So what happens is that they end up working instead with the existing media facilities. Their energies are wasted in these channels. The other thing that I think we should consider seriously is that such a community would help us to develop the kind of organization necessary to create economic alternatives. Because a Muslim community ultimately will grow when its economics is redistributed amongst itself. If we have, in that community, we have our own grocery store, butchers, or clothing stores, etc., then those monies that we now go to the various stores around and spend, which ends up going out of the community, become recirculated within the community. And this is a very great source for the economic growth of the community. Also, we have the issue of interest, riba, which many of us in one way or another have fallen into, whether it is through mortgages for our homes or insurance for our vehicles or whatever. To some degree it's greater than others. This situation can only be resolved when we are able to set up alternative financial institutions. Again, such a community would provide the kind of basis from which we could set up alternative institutions and remove us from the sin, the grave sin of dealing with interest, which Allah has cursed. We also have from the community a point of da'wah which we cannot express or develop without such a community. When we talk to people about Islam and they say, well, okay, show me, where is Islam? We are hard pressed. You can't pull up one of the countries of the Middle East or the Far East or whatever and say, this is Islam. Because these societies are all kinds of things that are against Islam. So we're left with Islam on a very theoretical kind of level. And only those, who are maybe more intellectual or whatever, who can grasp the potential of the theory will then become attractive. For the average person, he would like to see it in practice. A living example. Inshallah, we as individuals are able to show something through our own character, through our own behavior, how we deal with people, etc. We're able to show them something, but then it's very difficult to link this up clearly with Islam because you find a variety of different groups which are out there calling to the paths of Satan, who have people who have developed good morals. Everybody knows that if you want to sell your product, then you have to have a good representative. So whether you're a Jehovah's Witness, or you are a salesperson in a store or whatever, there are certain principles that you will learn, that you will train yourself with, so that you present a nice face to the customer, to the person you're trying to approach, you present, good character, etc., so that your product may be accepted. So this is general. If we were able to develop that physical community, could then present an Islamic environment, an alternative. A community of that type is one wherein women and children would feel safe Islamically. They would feel comfortable Islamically. For men to go out and deal in this society is a lot easier because a man in his dress is not required to be as obvious Islamically as a woman. For a woman to be a Muslim, it means she must wear at least khimar, headscarf, etc., long dress. Just to maintain her basics, she has to do that. Automatically, she stands out like a sore thumb in society. So she will be under pressure in a way that men are rarely under. What that tends to do, it tends to force many of the sisters to make compromises, to give up certain aspects of Islam, and then we may turn to the sisters and blame them for it. But if a sister, for example, she has 4 children, she has to go to work, she has to provide a living for her children, we cannot blame her if she is obliged to compromise and give up some aspects of Islamic dress for herself to maintain it. Unless we are prepared to offer an alternative. We say, okay, sister, you dress properly and we will provide for your life. We're not able. We're not in a position. The Islamic community, that Islamic physical community, would have in its midst certain homes or whatever, which would be for those people who are without homes, women, etc., who are in need, who would have means of training these women to help them to develop skills which they could utilize in their homes without necessarily having to go and face the pressures of non-Islamic society, you see. So, we would then provide, as I said, a means of da'wah for a non-Muslim. He could come into the community and experience Islam on a personal level. It is something we cannot do. The last point I'd like to raise concerning us within a non-Islamic circumstance struggling to establish Islam with its institutions and its systems of education, economics, etc. Until such time as we are able to gain control over the political, economic, and social aspects of our lives, at least on that community level, then we will be obliged to make certain compromises with the existing system. I would say that, and this is my opinion in relationship to working within the establishment, whether in the legal profession or in the police or in the various systems which exist in the society, which, if they are not somehow pressured or modified, will harm the community. I would suggest that it is necessary that some brothers become lawyers so as to be able to provide a means of protection for the community, not as a means of livelihood. A person goes and becomes a lawyer because lawyers make a lot of money, so they're going to become a lawyer. No. But as a means of protection of the community from that legal system. They would enter into the legal system and utilize it to defend the Muslim individuals and community when the need arises. Such a person, of necessity, would not be able to utilize the law freely as the non-Muslim lawyers may utilize it. That is, a Muslim lawyer would not be allowed to defend someone who he knows to be a criminal, a drug dealer, a gangster. This type of law, which is really what brings the fame and the money, the Muslim lawyer would not be allowed to practice. He could only take up cases which involve human rights, people's rights, etc., where, according to the law of the country, people are, have the right to this or the right to that, which is acceptable Islamically. I don't mean if you have, for example, a gay liberationist who says, it's my right according to the law to be, and so you're going to defend him because it's right according to the law. No, I'm saying we have, according to the law, what is acceptable Islamically, we defend those rights. What is not acceptable, then, in terms of one's practice, he would have to avoid those areas. So, I would suggest, and from my own experience in the North American context, where Muslims have, in recent years, entered into these systems, we have found that it has made a difference in the way in which the outer community deals with the Muslim community. It's obvious, for example, on a black and white basis. For example, in New York City, when the police force was all white, it was extremely vicious. Once blacks entered into the police force, it didn't mean that all of a sudden they are no longer vicious, but the viciousness was decreased significantly. They were not able to just lash out as they did in the past. This is a fact. Similarly, what we have observed, for example, in New Jersey, in Newark, where you have there 15 Muslims who are policemen, who are known Muslims. There are others who are hiding their Islam, but they're also within the structure. But those 15 were known Muslims. They have come to the aid of the community in so many circumstances, there's too much to enumerate. Where the law would have come down on Muslims, from a variety of different perspectives, they have been able to keep that law from harming the Muslim community. Personally, I could express that they provided for me a form of security, and this is due to the fact that a contract was put up on me by the Ansar in the United States because of a book which I wrote exposing the falsity of their beliefs. They provided, they in Newark were able to provide for me a level of security whereby I was able to give lectures even on a large scale basis, which had in the audience a number of people from the Ansar, but because of the kind of security they were able to provide, because they were legally able to carry weapons, and the systems of metal detectors, etc., they were able to provide a level of security that otherwise would not have been there. It's not to say I would not have gone and spoken, because regardless of what may be out there, when one's time comes to die, none of us can escape it. However, the Prophet has told us to tie our camels. That is, that we utilize whatever means exist in the society to ensure whether it is one's safety or the success of one's business, etc. And then we put our trust in Allah. We don't just jump off a cliff and expect Allah to save us. So, as I said, from my own experience there, and that experience of many in America, we have seen that Muslims entering into the various institutions of the society have been able to benefit the Muslim community on a level which would not have been possible otherwise. So it is something I feel that those of us, as part of a strategy for dealing in this Western circumstance, in Islamic circumstance, for Muslims here, they need to look at this realistically. Because I've heard a number of brothers who have felt a concern and desire to go into law, etc. I've been told by other brothers, this is haram, you cannot do so, etc., etc. When in fact, it is not clearly a haram situation. It is true, the person going into the legal system may have to make some compromise. He may have to stand when the judge comes in or bow or these type of things. Normally we understand Islamically, it's not allowed. However, when we look at the harm, we have a lesser harm and a greater harm. Muslims under pressure, under oppression, are allowed to take the lesser of two evils to prevent the greater. And where there are institutions which have policies, etc., which are for the benefit of the society to a certain degree, Muslims are allowed to take part in that, because we know Prophet ﷺ has said concerning a gathering which took place in Mecca prior to his prophethood, known as Hilf al-Fudul, in which the leaders of Quraysh had gotten together and proposed that they would have this committee which would look after the orphans, the needy, the people who are in need in the society. They set up this council we call the Hilf al-Fudul to deal with. The Prophet ﷺ has said that if they were to have done it in his time as a prophet, he would have joined them. Added to this are, for example, the medical profession. Right now, we know in Islam, we tell our women that they must cover themselves, everything except for their face and hands, or, they may also wear the veil. They choose to go some people hold it, it's also obligatory. But we're telling our women that they must cover themselves. But if they have to go for a checkup, or they have to go for delivery of a baby, or for an operation, then we're now telling them, now you should go to the hospital and take off your clothes and allow this man to observe you. This is halal. But this is what we're doing. Unless we encourage some of the sisters in the community to take up the skills of gynecology, etc., so that we can have in our community a clinic where our women can go to and not have to expose themselves to males, then we as a community carry the sin that every woman falls into when she has to expose herself in the hospitals, etc. We are in this because it is a community duty to establish alternatives. If some amongst us get up to do it, then the sin falls from the rest of us. But if none gets up to do it, then we all carry a share in that sin. So this is just another area which is, I think, very down to earth and very obvious to most of us. And there are many, many other professions and systems within society which may also be developed or maybe used for the benefit of the Muslim community. So in summary, I would say that Muslims here are faced with two alternatives. Either hijrah or staying and struggling. Hijrah in the sense of leaving this environment if they're able. However, even those who stay and struggle, there is an aspect of hijrah which remains open to us, and that is an internal hijrah where we make hijrah to a particular area of the city or a part of the country. And that we need to look into these possibilities very seriously so as to provide a foundation for the development of the Islamic community whereby we may apply our Islam on a larger scale, on a fuller scale. And we should make this effort believing that if Allah wills, this country could become an Islamic country. I mean, we shouldn't think and look at the people around us because they're, the colonizers, or, they're people of these backgrounds or whatever. It's not like they'll never accept Islam, or we could never establish Islam here. So our minds are always in terms of getting out of here somehow. No. If we're going to be here, then we should struggle believing that it is possible that we could establish Islam here. Whether Islam is established or not, Allah is not going to ask us ultimately why we didn't establish Islam here. He will ask us why we didn't strive. We were here, why we didn't make it. So we ultimately have a niyyah, which is required of us to make jihad on this level of establishing Islam within the society here. And as I said, it is only through the establishment of Islam on this community level, where we make some hijrah to some aspect of some part of the society, it is only through doing so that we will be able to successfully establish the kind of institutions, whether educational, economic, or social, which will provide alternatives for us in terms, and our children, our families, whereby they may live more fully Islamic lives, and whereby we may convey Islam to the next generation that is coming up. And I mentioned furthermore that the establishment of such communities would provide an example in the field of da'wah, which we are at a loss without such communities provided. And ultimately, that road to the establishment of the community will require us, until such time that we establish our own community, to enter into the various political, social, etc. institutions which have some means of benefiting the community, which, if they are not manipulated or utilized, will harm the community. We are obliged, I feel, that we are obliged in some way, shape, or form to enter into these institutions and use them for our benefit, for the benefit of the community as a whole, with the intention not of becoming tools for this system, this establishment, but of preventing these tools from harming us in the way that they are presently harming us, and will continue to harm us until we establish alternatives. I will stop here now and give you now an opportunity to respond to what I proposed. And as our brother said, these discussions, these lectures are ones where ideas are being proposed, possible alternatives are being proposed for us to examine, to reflect on, to take what is useful and leave what is not. It's not a situation where we're here to argue out, my opinion and your opinion, to prove you wrong or to prove me wrong. But it is supposed to be a means of exchange, passing on information, and we should discuss the information with this spirit of mind.
To first thing to say that we are very shortly coming up to a number of time, and I've got a number of questions here, all of which seem extremely personal, and I suspect that we may have to continue after that, inshallah. That's what I think. Just to begin, the first question I have here, with regard to forming a community, how can this be formed when the people leading the masjid cannot suitably lead the people and lack the knowledge to do so? As you have correctly pointed out, many mosques are inclined to nationalism, be it Afro-Caribbean, Arab, Asian, etc., despite their contention that they are Qur'an.
My opinion is that leadership is as strong as the community allows it to be or directs it to be. If the type of leadership that we have, if it is not suitable, if the mass of the people are aware of what their priorities should be and insist or strive to establish it, then the leadership will either conform or be removed. But the idea has to take root. As I said, I'm proposing an idea which quite possibly has been proposed, in a number of different other ways by others. We need first to be committed to the idea, to recognize the need for the idea. If, as a mass of people, we recognize that, then we can start to set up committees or conferences or whatever, which would then be dedicated to developing, we're talking about working conferences, not conferences of more and more talk, but conferences, working committees, where we then start to look into the ways and means of implementing these ideas. And this naturally should draw from a cross-section of the community, because you will find people in all of the various masjids all over the country, who may hold the same idea. So people should be called on the basis of this idea. Once the idea has taken root in the society or amongst a large enough representation of the community, those committed to the idea would then start to set about establishing the necessary steps. This may take place within an existing structure, because not all communities are on the same level. We're not going to say, we can't really attack every single community and say they're all ethnocentric, they're all this and they're all that. No. There will be a variety, a variation within the various communities and the leadership. We may find amongst them one particular masjid or community or area where people are quite open to the idea, and in that case then we concentrate our efforts in such a masjid or area, etc. We should not start off pessimistically. The one thing we need to start off, in my view, believing is that it is possible. Because if we don't believe it's possible from the get-go, then of course you can't go anywhere. Prophet Muhammad said the believer is optimistic, he is not pessimistic. So we should go into the situation believing fundamentally it is possible. Then what we go to look to see is what are the ways and means of making it, bringing it into fruition.
The next question is, some people are of the understanding that because we are in Darul Harb or Darul Kufr, that major sins like zina and fornication are allowed. Where does this come from?
This is a view which was held particularly within the Hanafi madhab, which to varying degrees have been accepted by the other schools, but none of them really accept it, as an open license, where because you're in what is classified as Darul Harb, it now becomes halal for you to be a criminal. None of them are promoting it on that basis. See, those people who start to talk about Darul Harb and Darul Islam, and it's okay for me to do this and that and the other, I mean, these are criminal-minded individuals who claim to be Muslims and will use these kinds of divisions, as an excuse for their criminality. That's a whole category in and of itself. Now, what was spoken of in the past in terms of Darul Harb and Darul Islam, Darul Harb was really a society which was at war with Muslims. So if you, a society, people who they're taking up arms, they're killing Muslims, they're massacring Muslims, etc., etc., you in that circumstance may be involved in dealing with interests and so on and so. This may be permitted to you because of that warring situation. None of them say, really, that under this circumstance you can commit rape. This is not a license to criminality, which is what, some people who I've heard echoing this kind of statement, tend to move towards, a license for criminality. No, but on the circumstances of pressure of life and death, where one is in a state of war, there are certain allowances that one may do this or one may do that, which normally on the Islamic state you would not be permitted to do or that. However, the circumstance here, though in a very theoretical sense, where you say everything outside of Darul Islam is Darul Harb. And some scholars also held that there was an in-between, the Darul Hudna, the area wherein there is some kind of peace agreement, some treaties that were made. That this is not considered to be Darul Harb in a pure sense. When we look at this circumstance here, where Muslims are able to set up masjids, pray, and do most of the basic things of Islam, for us to legitimately say this is Darul Harb in the sense that Muslims are fighting and killing, non-Muslims are killing Muslims, it's very far-fetched. This is closer to a area of treaty than it is to an area of war. And you may find some individuals who use the argument, well, the Muslims were starving in Ethiopia. This is a result of the policies of Britain. So therefore it is okay for me to steal from the bank because I'm, No. If in fact you were stealing from the bank and taking this money and sending it to the poor Muslims in Syria, then some scholars may say, okay, there is some justification in this case. If it was clearly shown that these banks or whatever were involved in the situation in Ethiopia. However, those people were talking about robbing banks, etc. These are people who are talking about robbing the banks and then buying a nice home for themselves, nice shoes and nice car, and this is what they're talking about. So this is why I really question, the sincerity of those people who like to promote this idea of Darul Harb. I would say, in fact, that most of what has been promoted as being legitimate is in fact really not legitimate in this circumstance. And when we deal in the area of interest, in specific, interest is something of such severity, where we have Qur'an and Sunnah, attacking it with such force. We need to fear Allah in dealing with interest and finding justifications for dealing with interest. We really need to fear Allah in this fear, because it's very easy to find justification. And this, in fact, is something of the major sins. When the Prophet ﷺ identified the 7 major sins, starting with shirk and magic, he stuck in there riba, interest, among the 7 major sins. Prophet ﷺ had said that the riba has over 70 branches. Interest that has over 70 different varieties. The simplest of which is equivalent to a man having sexual relations with his mother. This is serious. It's not to say that according to Islamic law, if you deal in interest, we'll take you and give you 100 lashes as we made to a person who had sex with his mother. I think. Now we're not saying that. It's not what the law says. But what the Prophet ﷺ is telling us is that the same way that we would feel repulsed if somebody was to suggest to us to have sexual relations with our mothers, then we should also feel repulsed when somebody suggests to us to get involved in interest dealings. But what in fact happens is that people feel very comfortable. No problem. We can deal with this. They don't feel any kind of repulsion, any kind of sickness within themselves in dealing with this fear. And that is because, in fact, their faith has fallen to levels which are dangerously low. So I would suggest that they need to reflect and fear Allah in this matter. As you know, I think that this situation here is something similar. I'm not saying that it is openly a situation of peace, but it is closer to that state than it is to a state of warfare, in my view. In the issue concerning the abrogation of peace treaties, this is one, of contention among scholars and scholars. It's not something unanimously agreed upon that it is not allowable for Muslims to make peace treaties with non-Muslims. Because the practice of the Prophet Muhammad all the way to prior to his death involved making certain treaties with non-Muslim forces. The very last battle that they were involved in, among the Muslim forces that went to do battle were non-Muslim forces. There were treaty arrangements with them. And this is right up until shortly before the death of the Prophet. So his practice, all the way along, also points something to us, or explains something to us in this matter. And as such, some body of scholars also do not hold that peace treaties as a whole have been abrogated. But that what Ibn Abbas has been referring to was peace treaties of a particular kind. Then they go into the details, reasoning of what type is allowable and what type is not allowable. So, it is a question of, if you are convinced that there is no such thing as a peace treaty and you're in a state of harm, then you're going to make your judgment on the basis of that. Or if you're in a situation where you look at the situation here, and it's not clearly a situation of harm here, though you may not necessarily look at this as being a state of peace treaty, but it's not clearly a situation of harm, then you work, Islamically in accordance to your view. One thing I would say is that one of the problems which faces us is that there exist different views, and if we are not able to allow people to have different views, then we split our ranks to the degree that we're not able to work together to do something for Islam. So while, for example, I may not agree with you that peace treaties are totally outdated. We still have a circumstance that we're living under here, and we have certain obligations here that we need to deal with. So I would agree with you to differ on this particular level, which does not affect something which is fundamental to Islam, like our belief in Allah, our belief in the prophets, and Salah, and the fundamental things. And we work on the basis of what is fundamental to us and what is agreed upon. And in that way, we can make some change and have some impact on society. For yourself, ultimately, when you reach the point where hijrah is possible for you, and at that point you're gone. And I accept it. You have the right to leave. Because as far as you're concerned, this is Dar al-Harb, and you need to get to Dar al-Islam if you ever find it anywhere. But whatever, you try to get there. You have the right. So, again, I just want to emphasize the importance that there are a number of different views out there. We need to be flexible in dealing with the different views and concentrating on the fundamental issues wherein we can cooperate and do something for Islam here in our circumstances now.
I guess just now that we break for Salat al-Maghrib, and inshallah we'll be able to see straight after that. Still very questions, inshallah.
But only an area where Muslims would control their environment, an Islamic point of view, in other words, that given area you would not find any bars, any houses of prostitution, any drugs being sold. We would control that environment so that non-Muslims who would be encouraged to the various businesses and educational needs that are available in the community would be encouraged to come in there, and they would see what effect that Islam may have on a community, on a given area. What are the results when Islam is implemented, even on that limited scale? What are the results? How do people benefit from it to become a living example?
The next question asks, can you give an account of an Islamic community, large or small, present today, which we in England can look at as a case study or living example to work for?
At present, the only community that I've seen on the basis of a particular ideology, who have done this, if you want to just get an idea of what can happen, is the Ansar community in America. However, the basis under which they have gathered, etc., and the means and the systems that they've used, of course, are illegitimate, Islamically. But if you just want to see, how where people take over a particular area and establish a cultural presence, how it can affect that area, that is an example of it. You will see, I know in America, I don't know if they have here in England or not, but in almost every major city in America you have what is known as Chinatown, right? And in Chinatown you will see how an environment can be controlled. But of course, again, this is on an ethnic basis. These are not on an Islamic basis. This situation, as I'm proposing, on a truly Islamic basis, has not been successfully implemented. There has not been, I feel, people sufficiently motivated to make the necessary sacrifice to bring such a model about. There have been attempts in different parts of the state, but
they either they were sort of unrealistic. You had one attempt that was made in Abatis, in Mexico. The community, they bought a large area of land, large areas of land there, and they called it area Dar Islam. And people migrated from different parts of the country there. But the leadership and the goals were not clearly defined, and the individuals involved were more attempting to relive a hippie experience when people were in the leadership of people or some other people from Islam who had established communes, etc. in America before. They were trying to relive this kind of experience on an Islamic, somewhat Islamic basis, and the ideology of those people involved, were questionable. The community since then, they did expand and build to a certain point, but then it sort of fell down because, as I said, many of the goals were unrealistic. Money was spent into the development of projects which were not realistic. Like the community was into this what they call Adobe architecture, and the idea of building houses and institutions out of mud. Like there's a technique which is used by the Indians in that area, in Mexico, and also used in Egypt, particularly advanced by a particular architect by the name of Hassan Hashi. He is one of the leading experts in Adobe architecture. So he was brought down there, and they built an Adobe masjid, a modern masjid, but we were using Adobe mud architecture. It is now a landmark in America. When you go to America, you see this very tourist places. It's one of the tourist places you may go and visit. But when you end up spending $2 million or $3 million to build a masjid out of mud, I mean, realistically speaking, that kind of money, you could have built, a more lasting structure, which may not be as aesthetically pleasing, but more practical and more lasting. And the other money could be used for, other infrastructure which was greatly needed. So due to this mismanagement of funds based on unrealistic goals, the project, has somewhat come to a halt. There is also in the States former followers of Elijah Muhammad under the leadership of Water Sabine. In Mississippi, they formed a community there they call it Elijahville, where they, it's again problems of ideology, but they gathered in a particular area where they control large amounts of land. They built schools, masjids, but it's a farming community. So what it does, it's super good if a person is into farming. That's a very good place to go. But realistically speaking, in my view, though we may try to develop some things in the farm belt or farm areas, most people in the major cities are not capable of going and living on a farm and dealing with what is required of the farm. So we need to develop alternatives within the cities or outskirts of the cities where people who have city skills can still be able to utilize these skills while living within an Islamic environment.
Next question, concerning the ayah, those who die in a state of oppression, are you aware of any authentic tafsir referring to them?
There's a number of tafsirs in reference to this verse. The verse actually related specifically to the time of the Prophet when Hijrah was made obligatory. This is the basis on which the tafsirs were made. However, the verses, we know that in understanding the Qur'an, we do not limit the understanding of the verse to circumstances and time in which it was revealed. Where the verse is applicable in our time, then the verses stand unless the verses have been abrogated. So the original meaning of the verse was in reference to people who did not make hijrah along with the Prophet Muhammad to Medina. However, as I pointed out, Prophet Muhammad had said that the hijrah continues until the Qiyamah. And this verse does speak of those who did not make hijrah and found themselves in a state of self-oppression. So wherever Muslims are in a state of self-oppression, and hijrah is an option, and they either don't make hijrah or are striving to make hijrah in one form or another, then the verse seems to apply to them also.
Assalamu alaikum. Just some points you made earlier on concerning Farsi Kifaya about having dawah, medical profession, education, financial, business, political, about trouble, providing food, clothing for ourselves, defense, giving shelter to the poor, etc., helping the needy, feeding the needy, visiting the sick. With all these things are possible without an emir or without leadership. But what we find today, we find many groups of Muslims who take on one or more of these aspects and try to establish them without such central leadership. Is it possible in your opinion? If it is, how?
Well, the issues of Amir, we know Prophet ﷺ had enjoined on us whenever we reach a certain number or beyond 3, etc., that we should have an Amir. One person should be appointed, as Amir for decision-making purposes. And any project of this nature, whether it is to a community or it is across the lines of community, there would have to, of necessity, be some form of leadership which would evolve to guide the effort. The leader, usually, according to Islamic nomenclature, designated as the Amir. However, the danger comes with the issue of Amir, and I say fundamentally we're required to do so. The danger comes when people misinterpret what are the functions of this Amir. Okay. When the Amir now becomes Amir al-Mu'mineen, he is given the status of the leader of the believers, and people are required to make bay'ah to him. Now we have another situation altogether, which in my view is a very dangerous situation. Because once a person claims that for himself, we also have the other hadith of Prophet ﷺ, which states that when there is a Amir, to whom bay'ah has been given, and another person calls to be an Amir, we should kill him. We have a serious situation. Because this is like opening the door, of license for Muslims to kill other Muslims. Ultimately, I'm not saying that the person who may actually be doing this and making bay'ah to himself is telling them to do this right now. I'm just saying that potential is there. When you have a statement like that of the Prophet ﷺ, it seems to apply in that circumstance, where you assign this status to a given individual, then you potentially have this situation evolving out of it. So I would say that the function of an Amir is really more of a coordinating function, not one that you are giving bay'ah to, you're pledging your life and allegiance. This man has got absolute right to make decisions, overriding the decisions of your shura and everything. Because what we're talking about, we're talking about Amir al-Mu'mineen, we're talking about one who, when everybody may agree on something, the whole shura, the whole council that he has with him, agrees on a particular point, he says, no, we're going to do it this way. He has that final say, and that is in that fashion. I say this is very dangerous, because in many of the cases, if not most of the cases, those people who are in positions of being Amir, etc., do not have sufficient background in Islamic knowledge, etc., to make those kind of decisions. Very dangerous situation. And I would suggest instead that the Amir, a person who would lead such an effort, would be one who is functioning more as a coordinator. one who would abide by the decisions of the shura as a whole. He would, be a figure who would speak on behalf of the shura, the consultative group that he has with him, which he consults and depends on for information, etc., etc. So that kind of amirat, I would say, would be necessary. Would be necessary for any project that we may attempt to establish Islam.
The next question asks, when trying to establish community, what do you do with people who constantly try to undermine leadership, alleging that the leadership does not have knowledge, and these people who make these statements are themselves committed to leadership elsewhere?
Well, I feel that knowledge is an essential component in leadership. However, with the state of ignorance of Muslims in general, we are obliged to accept leadership whose knowledge may be limited. And it's not a problem if a leader knows his limitations. He is not being presented as Amir al-Mu'mineen. These kind of issues don't become a problem for him. But it becomes a problem for the one who is promoted as Amir al-Mu'mineen, who people are given bay'ah to, anyone questioning his knowledge or his leadership capabilities. This becomes a big issue. So I would suggest that with the correct kind of leadership, which this situation demands, such questions or the raising of such issues does not present a problem. It does not undermine the leadership, because that leadership recognizes that it has its limitations. It's not all-knowing. He can easily make mistakes, and his decisions are by shura. So it is not an absolute kind of situation. So any kind of statement of that nature is not a personal attack against himself, or against the community. He can take that in his stride. But when the leadership is in the wrong form, this is when this becomes an issue, of undermining leadership, etc., etc. Because in any effort, we have to be open to criticism, to questions raised about decisions made. We should never feel that we are above questions.
Like that situation here, people trying to achieve all of the coming from different backgrounds, different backgrounds, different capabilities, different understandings. In your experience, what is the best system of formulating an actual system which will be beneficial for all one involved within that community? In the sense to say, sometimes people feel that they are intelligent to do something, but they are not going to utilize it. And in other cases, you have people saying, well, I know that I can do this, but they're not actually doing it. Now, according to my knowledge or experience that you have, which is the best way that you're seeing for people to develop, and in developing unity, actually develop within that actual collective movement going forward. You understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. I would just say that, the point, what seems to be the main point of what you're saying, is that really it's more of a statement really than a question. That for any of these kind of efforts to be successful, we will have to be able to utilize the resources that are available in the community. And this utilization has to be on the basis of people's capabilities. It should not be on the basis of friendships, where a person is put into this position because he's my friend, he's my buddy, he's one of the brothers. No. For the person who is put in a position to do a particular job, it should be because he's the one who's best skilled at that job. we have to give priority to people's skills. I mean, after Iman, because we talk, we have to do the foundation. But after our foundations of faith, when we're dealing with people to be put in various positions, it has to be according to their factual, what their capabilities are in fact, to prevent the community or the efforts from becoming, a clique or gang type effort.
Can I just say something about that? The reason I asked that question is because that's the reason of the history of when dissensions really became amongst the Muslims is when we really look at the time of Islam, which is the Khalifa of the Muslims. And Muslims start to level accusations of favoritism, etc., etc., etc. And if you look at this, great distinction came from people saying that person is not capable to run the Muslim because of his relationship to you. So this is what I draw upon. Allah is showing us that, look, this is what will happen when these kind of things start to take place, where people are put in this position on the basis of who's my body, who's my cousin, who's my relative, rather than a person being put forward for his belief and for his capabilities to execute judgment.
I'm in perfect agreement with you. However, I would just like to add that many of the accusations which were raised against the Khalifa Uthman were in fact not correct. Though we'll find in many of the history books that are around now, where the blame seems to be laid on Uthman, when you actually get back into the authentic narrations and traditions which were available from that period of time, you find in fact that much of it was false accusations. Uthman was a person who, though there's a tendency to portray him as being, weak, soft, and so on, he was